This happened 2 months ago in January of 2019. My parents went out to a party. They told me they wouldn't be back until at least 3 a.m. in the morning because the party was supposed to start at 8 p.m. and the party was going to be in New Jersey. We live in Connecticut, so it takes a while to get there and back. They told me to watch my 10-year-old brother and expected me to be responsible because I'm 15 years old. When they left, we watched movies all night while eating a bunch of popcorn. It was around 11:30, and we just finished watching Infinity War. I told my brother to brush his teeth and go to bed. I stayed up later than him to watch the movie Logan. The movie ended, and it was around 2 in the morning. I was getting ready for bed when my brother came down the stairs. I asked him what he was still doing up, and he said the boogeyman was in his closet and wanted to touch him. I looked at him in confusion. My brother isn't the type of kid to pull pranks or joke around. He wanted me to check it out. I said fine and started saying he probably just heard a house noise. He said he heard a noise coming from his closet, and when he checked inside, the boogeyman was there and said he wanted to touch him. We went inside his room. I turned on the light and we went to the closet door. I opened it, and what I saw made me seriously angry. There was a tall, scruffy-looking man with long, black, greasy hair. He looked as if he was in his mid-40s and was fairly built. I was pissed off when I saw this creep watching my 10-year-old brother sleep, and I figured out what my brother meant when he said the boogeyman wanted to touch him. I was so pissed off. I punched his throat. He dropped to the floor gasping for air, but I stepped on his face as hard as I could at least 6 times. He was covered in blood and was having trouble breathing. I grabbed my brother and ran into the bathroom, locking the door and calling the cops. Then I called my parents. My parents freaked out. In about 10 minutes, the cops showed up and searched the bedroom. He wasn't in there. They searched the house. He wasn't anywhere to be found. I gave them a good description of his appearance, and an officer even stayed at our house until sunrise. A week later, I was informed that the same guy was caught and arrested for raping an 11-year-old boy and murdering his parents. It turns out he had raped multiple children before and even murdered some of them and their parents. He was 47 years old and received a death sentence. If my brother never came downstairs to tell me what happened, then I fear the worst could have happened to him. And I'm extremely thankful that didn't happen.
Doesn't matter if you have 10,000 followers or just a few hundred. Print on demand is an amazing way to make money online.
I was 20 and only but
Work as a taxi. Nice guy at first. Work as a taxi driver.
and who knew what would have happened if I didn't find that knife?
My mom used to work as a taxi driver, and she started to go out with one of her coworkers. Let's call him Larry, for the sake of the story. He seemed like a nice guy at first. Finally, they got married and had a daughter, and we will call her Ruby. But once they got married, things started to change immediately. He was not a nice guy after all. If something didn't go his way, he always ran to his mom's house. Because in her mind, he was still her baby, even though he was a 50-year-old man. He was such a mama's boy. Mom and Larry would break up and make up a lot, so that was just normal behavior. But when he got drunk, sometimes we didn't let him inside the house as he can become a violent person. He'd break in by smashing a window to get in on occasion. Well, he would not hurt us, but broke things like a TV or a family member's computer, which made us terrified. The final straw was when he came into our house one day. He kidnapped Ruby and ran away for 2 days until the police arrested him and brought Ruby back home, even though Larry was her dad. Mom was literally traumatized by this incident. We decided to move out of our house. and it was a great idea to move away from him at a safe distance. We had none of his belongings, so he had no reason to come crawling back to us. So we moved out, and as time went by, we settled into the new house. We all started school, and I always woke up extra early to shower and play video games before I went to school. But this one day, when I woke up at 4 a.m. and finished taking a shower, I came out of the bathroom and looked out of the window unintentionally. It was still dark, and there was a man who was walking up and down the path by the side of our house. Suddenly, he looked up and stared at me. He realized that I saw him. I stood there and did nothing. Then he walked away and stood under the streetlight. It was Larry. He had the most malevolent smile I've ever seen. He came over to the mailbox saying that he was sorry. He said that he wanted to talk to my mom so they could start over again. I ran to Mom and woke her up, but we decided to call the police instead of letting him inside. About 10 minutes later, the police came to arrest him. They found out that he drove a car while drunk and left it halfway up the road. And when they searched him, he had a surgical scalpel in his pocket. He told the police that it was just a joke, but no one believed him.
Here at Union City, our glorious council ministers are dedicated to making all citizens happy all of the time. At Well-Being, we individually curate all our citizens' media. We ensure they only see material that is agreed.
When I was a kid, I was really into paranormal things such as ghosts and spirits, so I always got really excited for Halloween. On one Halloween, my parents took me and my brother to a ghost tour in the city. During the tour, we would visit real haunted houses, which were said to have some really violent ghosts. I couldn't be more excited. We arrived at the location for the tour meetup, an empty parking lot, but we were a bit early and nobody else had arrived yet. It was a chilly October night, so my parents decided that we should find a building to wait in until more people arrive. We walked over to the building that the parking lot was meant for, an old hotel, and entered the vestibule. We tried to fully enter the building, but we found that the doors leading to the lobby inside were locked. After a few minutes of standing around, I started to feel strange. A nauseous feeling had swept my stomach. Goosebumps ran up and down my arms, and a piercing feeling of being watched was stabbing, almost burning my back. Looking around, it was obvious that me and my family were the only ones inside the vestibule. The lobby of the building was also devoid of people. Once we saw people enter the parking lot, we left, and I felt better. And after that, I was shocked to see the first place we stopped on the tour was the building my family had been waiting in. Now, this building we won't enter, because the spirit inside here is more violent than the others will encounter, the guide stated. In here, we have the Shadow Man. He doesn't terrorize the whole building, just the area that you enter through. He's been known to slap and scratch people coming inside. A few pictures were passed around. All of a sudden, I don't know how and why, but I recognized that an inky black figure stood against the door's windows. Its eyes were glowing white, and it had long fingers and pointed nails. It was freaky to think that I might have been targeted by the Shadow Man, but I didn't think much of it until after the tour when my family went back home. I started to complain to my mom that my back was itching and burning, so she grabbed some ointment and told me she would look at it. We thought it was just a bug bite. We had been walking around outside at night after all. When she lifted my shirt, she asked when I had scratched my back. I told her I hadn't. She took a picture on her phone and showed it to me. I was met with a long red scratch leading from my shoulder to the middle of my back. The skin on my back was a shade of red, like a rash. Me and all of my family couldn't say anything, but just turned back straight to our house. The Shadow Man had got me.
My 10 seasons of research has concluded. 10 seasons of injecting pure streams of pop culture into a captive